rural bank depositors in Hunan and Anhui provinces continue to seek justice amid suppression by authorities. Amid heavy security on July 1st, an 87-year-old man stood alone in protest. 9 shocking posters revealing the social reality in China were quickly removed by the CCP. CCP prepares to further tighten ideological controls through patriotic education law. It's all covered in today's China Truths. Rural bank depositors in Hunan and Anhui provinces continue to seek justice amid suppression by authorities. In relation to the incident, in April of last year, 2 rural banks in Anhui and 4 rural banks in Hunan simultaneously experienced financial crises, resulting in the illegal freeze of deposits from nearly 400,000 account holders. To this day, a large number of depositors are still unable to retrieve their funds. Recently, some affected depositors organized 2 protest events on June 10 and June 22 during the Dragon Boat Festival to fight for their rights. However, both demonstrations were suppressed by the police, and multiple individuals were even injured and hospitalized. According to NTD News, on July 2, affected depositors staged a protest on a pedestrian bridge in Kaifeng, Hunan, holding banners and chanting slogans. According to Ms. Marue, an informed source interviewed by the Epoch Times, around 5 a.m. that day, approximately 50 depositors who held large amounts of funds in Hunan and Anhui rural banks gathered on the bridge to demand the repayment of their current deposits from the Hunan Provincial Rural Credit Union. Since it was early morning, they were not intercepted by the police. Internet videos spread showing protesters hanging a large banner demanding their money on a bridge in Kaifeng, Hunan, and displaying banners on the bridge with slogans such as "The Hunan government will return my deposit" and "The Hunan government will return my deposit." At the scene, a male depositor sat on the edge of the bridge contemplating suicide. He emotionally cried out, "My elderly mother is gone, she didn't see this money. If the Hunan government doesn't give the money, why should I continue living? How am I supposed to send my child to school without money?" Other depositors continuously exclaimed, "Heavens, heavens, where is the justice?" Meanwhile, other affected depositors repeatedly shouted, "Return our deposits, return our deposits." Another person stated, "We have never been able to withdraw our deposits. No department explains it to us. We have to go to Hunan to withdraw our deposits. As long as we go to Hunan, whether walking on the main road or on the bridge, they will use many police forces to deal with us." There are still hundreds of depositors detained in police stations, and many people are missing. According to news from depositors, most depositors who went to Kaifeng have lost contact. Ms. Marue, a participant, told the Epoch Times that the protesting depositors have relatively high amounts of funds in their Union Pay cards, with deposits of over 500,000 renminbi. They are demanding the reopening of online banking services to restore their freedom to withdraw funds. The depositors of rural banks entrusted their lifelong savings to the banks out of trust. However, their current deposits have been illegally frozen for 430 days, and haven't received a single penny. This money is their pension, emergency funds, medical expenses, and tuition fees. If this continues, many depositors will die without getting their money, she lamented. She expressed disbelief that such things could happen in what is supposedly a socialist rule of law in China. During an interview with the Epoch Times, Chinese-American economist Li Hengqing stated, "Previously, the Hunan provincial government and the Zhengzhou municipal government came out and assured the depositors that their money would be safe, and they would return their deposits. They started by returning the amounts below 50,000 renminbi, but they stopped before completing that. The total amount involved is nearly 20 billion renminbi, and the government cannot afford to pay that money. They do not have the funds, so they left it unresolved." He said, "When the banks don't repay the debts, and people go to collect, the local authorities directly beat and arrest them. It's an unbearable situation for many people." Amid heavy security on July 1, an 87-year-old man stood alone in protest. On the day of July 1, the Hong Kong police were on high alert, deploying heavy security forces in the Causeway Bay area to prevent public gatherings and demonstrations. While large-scale protests have diminished, Hong Kongers continue to express their defiance against the authoritarian government in their own ways. An 87-year-old Catholic man, Uncle Wu, appeared alone in Causeway Bay to the petition but was soon taken away by multiple police officers. According to the report by independent media, at around 4 p.m., 87-year-old Catholic Uncle Wu raised a handwritten sign that read, "Repeal the national security law, uphold human rights conventions, release political prisoners, may the Lord look upon Hong Kong," outside Sogo department store in Causeway Bay. He also wore a Jesus image on his chest. Uncle Wu stated that the sign represented his 4 demands and mentioned that he used to participate in the July 1st every year. However, for the past 3 years, he hasn't had the opportunity due to the pandemic. Uncle Wu mentioned that the government implemented gathering restrictions, with a fine of 5,000 Hong Kong dollars for violators. He couldn't afford to pay such a fine, and with the democratic groups being dispersed in recent years, it has become difficult for him to join the marches. Uncle Wu frankly acknowledged that he knew his petition would have little effect, but he felt compelled to come out for the sake of his conscience. He stated that he was prepared to be arrested and imprisoned, emphasizing that if he didn't come out, his conscience wouldn't be at peace. He also mentioned his faith and expressed that if he didn't have the courage to come out in such an environment in Hong Kong, he would be betraying his own beliefs. Before long, plainclothes police officers approached and intercepted him, taking him outside Sogo department store and setting up a cordon. At its peak, there were over 50 officers stationed near the cordon. Approximately 10 minutes later, Uncle Wu was taken away from the scene. It is unknown whether the police took any further action to arrest him. Many Hong Kong netizens expressed gratitude towards Uncle Wu, wishing him safety and hoping for divine protection for this brave, just, and kind old man. Some netizens remarked that Uncle Wu had spoken out for the sentiments of many citizens. They were deeply moved by his courage. 9 shocking posters revealing the social reality in China were quickly removed by the CCP. China's Sohu News recently cited data from authorized agencies and designed and published 9 posters to shed light on the pressing issues faced by Chinese society. These posters quickly became a popular topic of discussion among Chinese netizens. However, shortly after their release, the posters were promptly taken down, symbolizing their complete suppression. The content of these 9 posters is as follows. First, approximately 700 million people have a monthly disposable income below 2,600 Chinese yuan, around $360. According to the National Statistical Report on Social and Economic Development 2022 released by the National Bureau of Statistics of China, the country had a population of approximately 1.412 billion in 2022, with an average disposable income of 31,370 yuan, around $4,345. Among them, around 700 million people have a monthly disposable income below 2,614 Chinese yuan, approximately $360. Second, the youth unemployment rate among individuals under the age of 24 has reached 20% for the first time. According to a report by the National Development and Reform Commission, the youth unemployment rate for Chinese youths aged 16 to 24 was 20.4% in April 2023. This is the highest figure since the agency began releasing statistics in 2018. Third, approximately 50 million elderly people aged between 60 and 69 are still engaged in strenuous work. An article published in China's first Financial Economic Daily reveals that the country has 150 million elderly people aged 60 to 69, and around 1/3 of them are still part of the workforce. Among them, over 30 million work in agriculture, forestry, and fishing industries, while over 40 million work on construction sites. They earn unstable incomes and can only rely on such work to sustain their lives. Fourth, at least 150 million only children bear the responsibility of supporting their elderly parents. According to reports from CCTV and ITSI, China's demographers estimate that the country had 150 million only children in 2010, most of whom are now between the ages of 10 and 30. By the end of 2021, China had over 267 million people over 60 years old. With a rapidly aging population, the burden of supporting elderly parents has become a challenging issue for the only child generation. Fifth, China's population growth turned negative for the first time in 61 years. Data released by the National Bureau of Statistics of China indicates that the country had 9.56 million births in 2022, resulting in a population decrease of 850,000. This marks the first time in 61 years that China's population growth has turned negative. Specifically, the total fertility rate in China, i.e., the number of children per woman of childbearing age, has decreased from 0.7 to 0.5, and the average age of women giving birth has increased from 26.4 years to 27.4 years. Sixth, the rate of juvenile delinquency has increased by 42.8%. According to the White Paper on Juvenile Prosecution Work 2022, Chinese prosecution authorities handled, investigated, and detained 142,130 suspects in the juvenile age group from 2020 to 2022. This indicates a rising trend in juvenile delinquency. Seventh, the risk of depression in the unemployed group is 31%. According to the Report on the Development of Mental Health in China 2021 to 2022, the rates of depression and anxiety in China are 10.6% and 15.8%, respectively. The risk of depression in the unemployed group is 31%, which is 3 times higher than that of the employed group. Factors such as education and marriage also contribute to the increased risk of depression among young people. Eighth, China has approximately 85 million disabled people. The Development and Guarantee Plan for Persons with Disabilities by the Chinese National People's Congress highlights the large disabled population in the country. However, significant issues persist, including a high risk of falling back into poverty, low levels of social security and job quality, inadequate public services for disabled individuals, and the lack of equal rights and benefits for disabled people. Ninth, over 20 million people in China suffer from rare diseases. According to the Observation Report on Rare Diseases in China 2022 published by a public charity fund in Beijing, over 20 million people in China are affected by rare diseases. Treating these conditions clinically poses challenges, and the investigation results of these 20 million cases reveal that 42% of patients were misdiagnosed, and it took an average of 4 years to find effective treatment. These 9 posters inadvertently exposed the truth in China, which the Chinese Communist Party consistently attempts to conceal. After their publication, many netizens praised Sohu News, recognizing that there are few media channels left in China that dare to speak the truth. Some comments even express concern, stating, "Why do I feel like I need to save these posters? They will disappear soon, and Sohu News is risking everything." Since China reopened after the pandemic, the economy has been in recession, and people's livelihoods have become increasingly urgent. Faced with this social reality, a portion of China's young generation has chosen to adopt a lying flat lifestyle as a way to express their dissatisfaction. They refrain from purchasing houses and cars, engaging in romantic relationships, getting married, having children, and maintain a minimal level of consumption, striving to sustain a basic standard of living. CCP prepares to further tighten ideological controls through patriotic education law. Recently, China's communist regime proposed a patriotic education law during a meeting of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, which serves as Beijing's rubber stamp legislature aimed at preserving national unity. Experts have pointed out that the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has consistently blurred the lines between the party and the country. They argue that this patriotic education law is yet another attempt to compel Chinese citizens to love the party and its regime. Li Yuanhua, a scholar based in Australia and former professor at Capital Normal University in Beijing, stated on June 26 that the CCP has intertwined love for the country, the party, and socialism. This legislation is intended to safeguard the party's continued rule, its totalitarian control, and socialism, Li told the Epoch Times. A mainland Chinese lawyer, using the pseudonym Yang Ning, noted that the CCP has been promoting patriotism through mandatory state education spanning 9 years. Now that the CCP realizes that deception alone cannot achieve its objective, it is resorting to using laws to coerce people into submission or silence. This is its primary purpose, Yang said. The drafting of this law comes after 3 years of the regime's stringent zero-COVID policy, implemented during an economic downturn and high unemployment. The law is perceived as a reinforcement of ideological control in China, which involves creating more laws and regulations regarding information and freedom of expression. Yuan Hongbing, a legal scholar based in Australia, stated to the Epoch Times on June 26 that the CCP's actions have generated outrage and resentment among some segments of China's population. The CCP seeks to enforce people's loyalty through the coercive power of the law, essentially forcing people to love tyranny. Yuan added, this can only occur when a totalitarian dictatorship reaches its extreme. No political party in the world can compel people to love it through the use of laws. The CCP has stripped people of their freedom of thought and belief. Now, it aims to deprive them of emotional freedom and employ state violence to force them to love the party. This violates the fundamental norms of modern civilization. CCP is not China. Li emphasized that the international community has distinguished the CCP from the Chinese people and China itself, which is what the party fears most. The party must link the CCP, China, the Chinese people, and the so-called socialism together as a bargaining chip against the world, he said. Li believes that the drafting of the patriotic education law is a response by the regime to its governance crisis. It confuses the concept by suggesting that patriotism means loving the party's tyranny rather than the nation. Sensing a crisis, it uses legislation as a means to intensify indoctrination of the people. Li also expressed concern that the patriotic education legislation will cultivate more little pinks or big pinks, pro-CCP Chinese individuals. He warned that once incited by the CCP's version of patriotism, these people could become tools for the party to confront the free world. Yuan Hongbing stated that the party now seeks to suppress any form of resistance, be it through thoughts or actions, by employing state coercion. However, this also signifies that the CCP has reached a breaking point in a more dangerous crisis. After nearly a decade of CCP tyranny, its entire brainwashing technique has been bankrupted, and the party is facing an unprecedented political and social trust crisis, Yuan said. Now, as it tries to compel people to love its tyranny, it will only encounter stronger resistance from the Chinese people. Don't forget to leave a comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths.